Okay. So recording is in progress. Let's go. Right. So good evening, everybody. Thank you very, very much for joining us this evening. I'm here with my colleague, Sue, who is also a sugar cravings coach. And we are going to teach you how to get control of your sugar cravings in 3 really simple steps. So I'm going to tell you what those steps are straight away, and then we're going to talk about it in a lot more detail. But the 3 steps are, first of all, supporting your physical body, your physical well-being. The second step is learning how to manage your mind and your emotions around your sugar cravings, because believe it or not, a lot of your sugar cravings come from your mind. And then the third step is accountability. So in a second, I'm going to hand over to Sue, and she is going to talk you through the first step of physical support. And at the end, when I finish speaking, then with your permission, I'd like to tell you how I can help you a little bit further, possibly. So Sue, if I hand straight over to you, I will mute myself.
Okay, perfect. And I will just share my screen.
If I miss anything at any point, Sue, please feel free to butt in.
Okay. Can you see that screen okay? Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, perfect.
Well, thank you so much, Nikki, for asking me to join you this evening. I love how we work together in collaboration around the physiological side of choosing to eat sugar and the psychological side of choosing to eat sugar. So I'm Sue Thomas. I've been in the wellness industry for 20 years, but I was previously a personal trainer, but now I am a nutritional therapist, and I work specifically with women to empower them to break their addiction to sugar using nutrition. So using the power of balancing our blood sugars and getting our insulin under control. So I'm going to take you on a little journey over the next 20 minutes just to understand what's going on from a physiological point of view in your body when we crave sugar. So let me just move my screen on if it does. Okay, so here is our cycle of sugar addiction, first of all. When we consume sugar, it releases a small amount of dopamine. I'm sure Nikki's going to bring dopamine in when she talks in a little bit more in a little while, but it makes us feel good, basically. That's why we kind of we treat it like a comfort food, because it makes us feel a little bit better. We might reach for it when we're feeling low, or if we want to reward ourselves, because that little dopamine hit makes us feel good. But also, and this is for me where it is super important, is when we consume sugar, our pancreas releases insulin, and insulin is our blood sugar hormone, and it is designed to be released in the circulatory system to pick up the sugars that have been released from our stomach and from our intestine and take those sugars to the cells for energy production. Now, in 21st century life, what has become more and more relevant, I guess, is that we're living more a sedentary life than we've ever lived before. So we're not using those sugars for energy production. So insulin is being released to pick these sugars up and take them out of the bloodstream and take them to the cells for the mitochondria to convert that sugar into energy, to convert the glucose in the sugar to energy. But if we're not using that energy, all the insulin receptors on the cells basically start to shut down because the cell doesn't want any more sugar. So imagine it's like a coal fire in a steam engine, and we're shoveling the coal into the steam engine, into the fireplace, and the engine pulls into the station and is standing idle. We don't need to shovel any more coal in. And that's exactly the same as is happening when we consume sugar. If the mitochondria doesn't need the energy, doesn't need to create the energy because we're maybe sitting at our desk or driving in the car, what ends up happening is the insulin receptors on the cells start to shut down because they don't want the sugar in the cells, basically. Excuse me. And that is when we start to become insulin resistant. So when the insulin receptors shut down on the cells, we need more sugar and more insulin to get sugar into the cells for any kind of energy production. So we start to get into a stage of insulin resistance. But also when we're starting to consume more sugar, because we need more insulin to try and get sugar into the cells because all the receptors have shut down, we then start to have higher and higher levels of insulin in the system. And we don't want insulin to rise too quickly. Insulin, if it rises quickly, we release a lot of it. It will pick up all the sugars, and if it can't use them in the cells, it will either take them to the muscles and store them as glycogen, or it will take them to the liver and store it as fat. Basically, the liver converts the sugar into triglycerides, and we store it as fat. And when the insulin takes the sugars to the liver to convert into to triglycerides, we have then a blood sugar crash. All this sugar is being taken out of the cardiovascular system to the liver, and our insulin levels fall, our blood sugar levels fall, and then we crave more sugar. So our cravings kick in, because when we hit a low point where there's not enough blood glucose, the brain kicks in and says, what we need to do now is eat some more sugar to lift our blood sugars back up again. And so we eat more sugar, our insulin levels rise back up again. We don't need the insulin, we don't need the sugar, more receptors on the cells shut down. We have to eat more sugar, more insulin in order to try and get some sugar into the cells. We have another crash. And then we go on an insulin roller coaster, a blood sugar roller coaster, basically throughout the day. And every time your blood sugars crash, that is when you will crave sugar. And that usually occurs around 10:30 in the morning and 3 o'clock in the afternoon. If you've got that craving to have a cup of coffee and a couple of biscuits, or that afternoon slump where you need some sugar to pick you back up, that is the cycle of your blood sugars dropping after you've eaten your breakfast, lifting back up again because you eat sugar, crashing again and eating your lunch, and then crashing again and eating something at 3 o'clock. So that is someone who is on a blood sugar roller coaster. So let's just explore a little bit more about glucose and understand in more detail just how the body metabolizes glucose. So we need glucose to function. Glucose is carbohydrate, basically. It's 3 food groups: carbohydrate, protein, and fat. Carbohydrate is the only food group that has a relationship with insulin. Protein and fat don't have a relationship with insulin. Whenever we eat any form of carbohydrate, it will turn it into glucose for energy production. On one end of the scale of carbohydrates, we have the very fibrous carbohydrates in the terms of reds, greens, orange vegetables. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we have what the diet industry and the food industry have termed complex carbohydrates and then refined carbohydrates. So complex carbohydrates being bread, pasta. They've basically given it a little tag that says it's okay to eat this carbohydrate because it's complex and it'll break down much more slowly. That doesn't happen, unfortunately, and there's a number of other physiological processes that you need to understand as well. But so imagine you've got this glucose spectrum. You've got green, red, orange, beige, and white is the easiest way to remember it. The green, the red, and the orange contain something called antioxidants. Now, every physiological process the body goes through releases something called free radicals. Free radicals are naturally occurring substances in the body, but they are volatile molecules that need an electron to stabilize themselves. If they don't find that electron, they will attack healthy tissue and cause inflammation in the body. They'll speed up the aging process. Now, greens, reds, and oranges contain lots of antioxidants. So those antioxidants have a spare electron on them, and they will donate their electron to the free radical that's created when we're accessing the glucose from those reds, greens, and oranges, those fibrous carbohydrates. They'll donate their electron to the free radical. It neutralizes the free radical, and it can be flushed out of the system, and it has no impact on the body whatsoever. If we're consuming our carbohydrates from the complex carbohydrates or the refined white carbohydrates, these substances don't contain antioxidants. They don't contain the kind of antidote, if you like, to the free radical production when we are accessing the glucose in those carbohydrates. So we don't have that electron donated to the free radical, and as a result, the free radical is still in the system, it's still volatile, and it will start to attack healthy tissue. It will speed up the aging process. It could be the lines around your eyes, age spots on the back of your hands, joint inflammation, stiffness in your joints. All of these things are signs that you have free radical damage in your body, inflammation in your body that is being caused by consuming sugar from that beige and white group. The glucose, we're accessing glucose from more processed foods that don't have any benefits to the body. So when we talk about sugar, We're talking about glucose, which is the substance the body needs to function. But we want to be getting our glucose from the reds, the greens, and the oranges. If someone says to you they're on a low carb diet, if they're eating lots of vegetables, that's not a low carb diet, because vegetables are carbohydrate. What they're on is a low complex carb diet or a low refined sugar diet. What we want to be doing is filling our plate with all these colors that are full of antioxidants and will give us loads and loads of energy, but ultimately will also help to keep our blood sugars really well balanced, because the release of the glucose from those reds, greens, and oranges, it's a slow release, and it doesn't cause insulin to rise quickly in our system. So insulin is released from the pancreas to pick up the energy that's created from those reds and greens and oranges, but it's not a fast release. And so the insulin can pick up the sugars really slowly. We don't have this spike. And as a result, we've got consistent energy throughout the course of the morning. So let's just look at our blood sugars and what happens to our blood sugars when we are consuming foods from that beige end of the spectrum. So if we're consuming something, let's say you have a bowl of Special K for breakfast, because the diet industry has told us that's what we need to have. It's low calorie, and it's going to allow us to keep our calorie consumption low, because what we're looking to do is manage our weight more effectively. We have that Special K at the bottom of this red curve here, and it releases sugars into the bloodstream very, very quickly. So insulin is released really quickly into the system. We usually have a peak here in insulin around about 90 minutes after we've eaten it. And then we will have a crash, because the insulin is too high in our system, the sugar's too high in our system, and the insulin needs to take that sugar away from the bloodstream, away from the cells to the liver, and convert that sugar into triglycerides, because we don't need to use the sugar for energy production. So then we have a crash of insulin and blood sugars. So we go right down below that second green line. That is when we can feel like brain fog. We can feel really tired, really lethargic. We crave sugar at that point. And our brain kicks in and says, what you need to do now is lift your blood sugars right back up again. So we'll reach for a sugary snack. We might have the 2 digestive biscuits with our coffee. We might have a Twix with our coffee, or whatever is in maybe the vending machine at work, or what have you. And so our blood sugars rise really quickly again. More insulin is released. We have that spike after about 90 minutes of consuming that sugary snack at 10:30. The blood sugars rise really quickly, insulin's released, insulin picks all that sugar up and takes it away and converts it again into fat, and we have another crash, and that usually coincides with around lunchtime. So we'll eat something really quickly to lift our blood sugars back up again, not even thinking about it oftentimes because we're really hungry. This happens 90 minutes later. We have another spike and then another crash, and that might happen about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We have that blood sugar slump, and this goes on throughout the course of the day. And when blood sugars are on a massive roller coaster like this, what also happens is because it's a stress in the body, we end up releasing a hormone called cortisol. And when cortisol rises too high in the system alongside insulin, the two hormones together are like the ugly sisters of hormones, and they just basically mess up everything else in the body. It won't if you've got high levels of cortisol and high levels of insulin, you can't burn fat for fuel. You will have some hormone problems, maybe menopause symptoms might get worse, maybe PCOS or polycystic ovaries or fertility issues. All of these can be linked back to high insulin and high cortisol in the system. If insulin and cortisol are high in the system, we will struggle to get decent quality sleep, because those two hormones again mess up the hormones that need to be released to allow us to go into a good quality sleep. And also, if insulin and cortisol are high in the system, we will feel constantly hungry, because those two hormones cause the release of a hormone called ghrelin. That means then ghrelin is a hormone that increases our appetite. And so we'll be constantly searching around the kitchen for something to eat, trying to keep it within our calorie limit for the day, and just craving something all the time. So when we're on this blood sugar roller coaster, the result of that is something called leaky gut. And this is an extreme example. Not everybody, please don't get me wrong, if you're eating a bar of chocolate at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you're not necessarily going to have leaky gut. But the ultimate consequence of that is that our intestine starts to become more compromised. So when we're consuming sugar, As I said already, cortisol is released because it's an inflammatory response in the body. It's causing inflammation. This blood sugar roller coaster is causing stress internally and inflammation in the body. And as a result, we release cortisol. Now, cortisol is a highly toxic hormone if it rises too high. Not only does it impact the other hormones, it also destroys the health of the good bacteria in our intestine. And that good bacteria in our intestine should form a really healthy barrier around the wall of the intestine so that nothing can pass across that shouldn't be passing across. So if we've got some food molecules that are undigested, or if there's a pathogen or a virus in there, if our gut bacteria is really strong and functioning really well, it prevents anything from passing across into the cardiovascular system. So you have these really tight junctions on the endothelial cells, as you can see on the left-hand side there. On the right-hand side is what happens when cortisol is high in the system and it disrupts our gut bacteria. Our gut bacteria can't function effectively. It starts to form holes in this protective barrier. And as a result, food particles, pathogens, viruses can begin to wear away at those junctions, start to pass through and pass into the cardiovascular system, basically start to create holes in the wall of the intestine. This, again, causes further inflammation. Our immune system is designed to prevent anything passing across its lines of defense. The gut wall is a line of defense. And if something passes across that gut wall, the immune system then goes into overdrive. So if you imagine you cut your finger and there's a breach in your defenses, a little bit of inflammation is created around that cut to try and prevent anything passing across. Exactly the same happens on your gut wall. If something passes across the gut wall, a little bit of inflammation is formed around that hole to stop anything passing across, to plug the hole essentially. But because there is no protection from the gut bacteria, other places, the other holes start to appear. And so it's like starting to create a leaky bucket. All these different holes begin to appear. Food particles are passing across the gut wall. The immune system is trying to create inflammation to stop all these things passing across. And as a result, we have more what we call systemic inflammation, which is deep down inflammation, which causes more stress in the body, causes more cortisol to be released, and causes more disruption to our blood sugar balance. It also can take us into a state of autoimmunity as well, where our immune system is in just working overdrive the whole time. So basically what happens when we consume high amounts of sugar, that results in our blood sugars going out of balance. That out of balance blood sugars causes a stress in the body. Stress results in cortisol being released. Cortisol disrupts the barrier, the gut bacterial barrier, which allows for food particles to wear away at the junctions of the endothelial cells, pass across into the cardiovascular system, which then the immune system tries to plug. More inflammation is set up around the intestine, and as a result, more cortisol is released because it's a further stress on the body. So all of these things can be linked back to the consumption of sugar in its refined form and in its what I call complex form, but it's not. It's just another form of sugar without those antidotes, those antioxidants to prevent inflammation being caused in the system. If we're getting all our glucose from those reds, greens and oranges with all those antioxidants, they will prevent free radicals from causing inflammation. Stress won't happen in the body. We won't release cortisol, and then that won't knock on to causing our intestine to be compromised. The consequences then of of consuming more and more sugar, not only do we crave more sugar when we consume sugar because it has addictive properties, this inflammation that's caused puts our blood sugars out of balance, which causes us to crave even more sugar. And the consequences are brain fog, low mood, that afternoon slump, lack of productivity, not being able to focus on anything, poor sleep, very little energy, lots of IBS symptoms from the disruption to our intestine, joint pain and discomfort, and a loss of confidence and anxiety as well, because our gut health is directly linked to our confidence and our ability to function, our mental well-being. There's a direct link between the brain and the intestine, and anything that's going on in the intestine will come out in the brain. And so we will feel anxious, we will lose confidence, And that in itself then means that we don't have the time to cook, we don't have the time to prepare things essentially, and we're always reaching for solutions to eat, which aren't necessarily a kind of healing to the body, and they can cause further inflammation. And then also just be mindful of where there are hidden sugars as well. We are a nation that has become obsessed with counting calories, but actually when we count calories, it's not the right thing to do. There are 4 calories per gram of sugar, and there are 9 calories per gram of fat. So what the diet industry has done has demonized fat and said, fat's the problem. We need to keep our calorie consumption low. So we'll take fat out of everything. When you take fat out, when you take that food group out of a substance, you have to replace it with something else. Otherwise it doesn't taste of anything. So they will add sugar to low fat yogurts. They will add sugar to all sorts of low-fat substances. So you might be thinking that you're keeping within your calorie range for the day, but actually your blood sugars are on a massive roller coaster. And if your blood sugars are on a roller coaster, you're going to have high insulin, high cortisol. You're not going to burn fat. You're not going to manage that weight. You might have been I don't know if you've experienced this, you might have found yourself focusing really, really hard on your calorie consumption, reducing it right down, and still not seeing a result. And that is because there's all this stress going on internally. You've got too much sugar in your diet without even realizing it. So be really mindful of hidden sugars in low-fat products. Be mindful of hidden sugars in things like sauces. There's more sugar in a pasta sauce than there is in a can of Coke, a full-fat can of Coke. It is frightening when you start to uncover where sugar is hidden. And then also low or diet drinks. So diet drinks, although they don't have any calories in them, because they have sweetener in them from an artificial source, that still causes the release of insulin from the pancreas. So you will still end up on a blood sugar roller coaster, even if you're consuming drinks in the diet form. You may not be exceeding your calories consumption, but you will still be causing a blood sugar roller coaster. So the way to manage our weight more effectively is to really focus on filling our plate with loads and loads of colors, and to not stress about low fat or diet products, but to focus on consuming all 3 food groups, from getting your carbohydrates from all the colors, getting your good quality fats from seeds and nuts and avocados, and then getting your lots and lots of protein in your diet as well. Neither fat nor protein have that relationship with insulin. It's only carbohydrate. And you can lower that relationship with insulin by making sure your carbohydrate source is all from those fibrous carbohydrates in the form of those colors. When our blood sugars balanced, this is what should happen. It's the blue line that we are looking to achieve. So here you can see this lovely blue line that goes within the green line. And this is the optimal place to have your insulin. Rather than having this peak and trough, if you make good food choices, you will find that your insulin can stay within this line here, and you don't release cortisol in the same way. You don't have high insulin levels, and you can be a much more effective fat burner. So by having our insulin within that line, this is through the course of the morning. If you make the right choices at breakfast, that can cause your insulin to stay really steady through the course of the morning. So first thing in the morning, our stomach is full of hydrochloric acid. Hydrochloric acid is designed to break down protein first and foremost. It's not designed to break down carbohydrate. So if we're consuming toast or cereal for breakfast, that's going to put us on this red line. It's going to spike our blood sugars because the hydrochloric acid is breaking the carbohydrate down really quickly. If we're consuming protein for breakfast, maybe in the form of full-fat yogurt with some seeds and nuts, or in the form of some scrambled eggs with avocados and spinach, for example, that's going to cause the release of insulin to be much slower because it's protein, and that hydrochloric acid will break the protein down really steadily. And so you will set yourself up to be on this blue line for the course of the morning. So you can eradicate the craving at 10:30 because your insulin levels are really nicely balanced. You've not got a peak and a trough. You're not going into that brain fog and that lack of productivity and that brain kicking in to say, eat something sugary. You're just breezing through the course of the morning through to lunchtime. And when you get to lunchtime, making really good choices because your insulin level has not dropped below the point at which is healthy for your blood sugars. You want your insulin level to be really flat, but stay within this green line of kind of good blood glucose levels to give you energy, to allow you to sleep properly, to make you feel good every single day. That's what you want to achieve, this lovely blue line here. And that all starts with what you choose to eat for breakfast. If you get your breakfast right, as I said, that will have a knock-on effect throughout the course of the day and can really help you to eradicate cravings. Now, we're all different, we're not the same. So what you need to do is listen to how foods make you feel. I challenge you all to tomorrow morning to have 2 boiled eggs for breakfast and see how that makes you feel through the course of the morning. Some of you won't be hungry still at 2 o'clock. Some of you will be getting more hungry by about midday. That is because your body metabolizes things at different rates. So there's no one size fits all when it comes to managing our weight effectively. What we have to do is listen to how food is making our body, making us feel. Is it making us full of energy, or is it making us feel tired? If we're full of energy, our insulin levels will be really nicely balanced. If we're tired, it's going to spike our insulin and crash our insulin. It is all about getting insulin under control. When we can manage our insulin, that's the panacea to unlocking better hormone balance, better sleep, better energy, less bloating, feeling fabulous, feeling confident in our clothes, and wanting to live life to the full. And that all comes down to getting our blood sugars balanced and our insulin levels specifically balanced. It's not about low fat. It's not about counting calories. You won't eat anywhere near as many calories if your blood sugars are really well balanced, because you won't need to, because your body's using fat for fuel and your ghrelin levels are low, so you're not feeling hungry all the time and you can function really effectively. So when we have blood sugars balanced, greater mental clarity, improved mood, avoid the afternoon slump. I don't need to tell you all of these things. I've told you all of these things already, but you will feel so much better when your insulin is on this really steady curve. So how to achieve that in four simple steps. Eat protein for breakfast, as I said already. Think about full fat breakfast with yogurt and seeds and nuts and maybe some blueberries, or some boiled eggs with spinach and avocados, or some salmon with scrambled eggs. All of those are great protein sources for breakfast. Fill your plate full of colours. Don't be worrying about thinking you've got to get those complex carbohydrates on there. They're not relevant. Get your plate full of colours, as many colours as you can fit on your plate, with some good quality protein, and that will keep your blood sugars balanced from one meal to the next. Try and finish eating by 7 o'clock in the evening. This is really crucial, because if you finish eating by 7 o'clock in the evening, by the time you go to bed, your insulin levels will have come down, which means you'll sleep better. And when you sleep better, your insulin can really start to rebalance. And so you can then start to push your breakfast later into the morning, so that you've got this kind of eating window. I know it's something that Nikki advocates as well, an eating window where you can sleep better, allow inflammation to come under control in the body, and just start to function more effectively when you've had a good sleep and your insulin is really nicely balanced. And try to avoid snacking. Again, there's this kind of misconception that what we need to do is to keep our insulin balanced is to eat 5 meals a day. What that does is keep our insulin high. It doesn't keep our insulin balanced necessarily, or it doesn't keep it low. What we want to do is avoid snacking between meals, so that when we eat something, our insulin will rise slightly, but then it gradually tails off nice and slowly. If we avoid snacking, as our insulin comes lower, we can become what's called metabolically flexible. We can start to access our fat for fuel, rather than constantly using glucose as our source of fuel. So if weight management is a goal for you, try to be eating a meal that keeps you full from one meal to the next, so that you don't need to snack between meals. There's lots more you can do to support your blood sugar balance, but these are simple things that you can take away right now and start doing them tomorrow, to really start thinking about, how does food make me feel? Can I get from one meal to the next? And what can I have at breakfast time that is more protein based, to allow to start the day? If you get your day started well, that will have a knock-on effect to the rest of the day, I absolutely promise you, and you will be able to cut your cravings forever. So I'm going to stop talking there. I'm going to stop my share, and I'm going to hand it back over to Nikki.
Thank you very much. So it's interesting, isn't it, Sue? Because with the breakfast thing, what I've learned is I do fast. So it's like a practice of mine. I eat between 12 I start my first meal at 12 in the midday, and then I generally stop eating by 6:30, 7 o'clock at night. But since discovering you and discovering the physical aspects of the body, what I'm so much more aware of now is making sure that that first meal of the day is protein based. So even though my first meal of the day is at 12, I now make sure it is sort of eggs, quinoa, vegetables, and like nutritionally packed, protein packed meal. And I find that then that sustains me then to my evening meal.
Yeah.
So we do actually have a question, and I've meant to say at the beginning, actually, everybody, if you have a question, we if we have time, we can actually bring you on at the end, but pop it in the Q&A. The chat function isn't working, but if you pop it in the Q&A, then we can answer it. So Sue, are you able to see the Q&A?
Yeah, I can. And I can see Katie said, what's the desired or good level of blood sugars to aim for? It depends how you're monitoring it, Katie. If you're monitoring it on a scale of 1 to 10, which is what they used to do, you want to be aiming for a blood sugar balance of around 4.5, something like that. You want your insulin levels to be no higher than 4.5. Anything above 7, they would put you in a sort of pre-diabetes category or diabetic, type 2 diabetic. Now they do it with the HbA1c level. So they measure it basically over, it's done on a scale of 100. You don't want your blood sugars to go any higher than 40. That would put you into type 2 diabetes. And really what you want to be looking at is around kind of anything between 7 to 15 is an okay blood sugar balance. There's lots of blood sugar monitors on the marketplace now, so you can monitor it yourself now, but you want to be keeping it at least below 20. You don't want to be eating foods that would spike your blood sugars above 20, basically. I hope that's helpful.
And Jenny, I can see your hand is raised as well. If you have a question, then pop it in the Q&A. Oh, actually, there's another question, Sue. Can kids have this kind of diet?
Yes, absolutely. It's really good for them. Really good for them. It's so much better from their. It's so much better for their mental well-being if their blood sugars are really well balanced. They don't have to be relying on pasta all the time. Now the thing with kids is they do, because they're using more energy and because they're growing, we can afford to give them a little bit of bread or a little bit of pasta. But if you have a history of digestive dysfunction in your family, then you want to be avoiding pasta and bread anyway. But you can replace it now. There's lots of pastas out there with, like kind of lentil pastas and things like that. I would try and avoid gluten-free breads and things like that because they tend to be full of sugar. So, but yes, kids absolutely can be following this diet. In fact, my kids all do. They all follow that lower complex carbs, higher colorful carbs, fibrous carbs more than anything else. Because it's so good for their energy levels, it's so good for their mental well-being, it's so good for their sleep, basically. So don't be frightened. I think the food industry has convinced us over the years that what we need to do is follow their regime and their way of eating, but their way of eating actually is for their benefit, not for ours. So,
and I love it, Sue, when you said that we all know each individual body is slightly different. And we all have the knowledge in us to know what is good for our body. So actually that brings me really nicely onto what I'm going to talk about, and that's your brain and your emotions. So I don't know if you know this. Actually, I should introduce myself for those of you that don't know me. I'm Nikki Bevan. I'm a sugar cravings and life coach. So a couple of years ago, I certified as a life coach, and part of the program was weight loss. And at that point, I didn't think I needed that to lose that much weight. It was overeating and over drinking. And I wasn't a big drinker, but my goodness, did I have a sweet tooth after every meal. Even if it wasn't necessarily chocolate, it would be dates or it would be some sort of sweet need that I had. So I applied the tools that I learned in my life coaching and my mind management, and I applied it to my sugar cravings emotion. And that's what I'm going to teach you tonight. And it complements what Sue has just gone through beautifully. So you're a human being. Now, I don't know if that might be a shock to you, but you are a human being, which means you have a phenomenal human brain in your head. I am not a neuroscientist, so I'm not about to go into the complexities of the brain. But the two parts that I work with my clients are the primal brain, which is the amygdala at the back of your head, and your prefrontal cortex. Now, starting with your primal brain, it is really old. Your primal brain is stuck back in the caveman days, hundreds of thousands of years ago. I should also tell you at times I have a bit of a potty mouth, just to warn you, it's not my need to offend. So your primal brain's really old, and it's designed to keep you safe. And the way that it keeps you safe is by thinking anything new, anything different, anything outside of the cave, outside of the pack, surely means death. So we can have a little bit of compassion for our primal brain, because the other thing that happens is hundreds of thousands of years ago, to ensure our human survival, to ensure that we are evolved as a human race, we had a hit of dopamine when we had the true pleasures in life, when we did the things that ensured our survival, such as sex, wholesome foods, hydration, the safety and the comfort of a cave, the dry, the warmth. When we were part of a pack, we needed those things in order to survive. So to make sure that we got up out of our warm cave to go and get food, to have sex, to have water, and to be part of a pack, we had a hit of dopamine, and dopamine floods our body with pleasure. When you roll on hundreds of thousands of years in our now modern day world, we have manufactured pleasures. We have false manufactured pleasures surrounding us all of the time that's giving us a huge hit of dopamine. So our brain, our primal brain, quite literally thinks the sugary drinks, the chocolate, the porn, the Netflix, that is a survival requirement. We need it because of the dopamine hit we get. So we can have a little bit of compassion for our primal brain. The first tip that I have for you, which is really quite funny, is to name your primal brain. Now, my primal brain is actually called Sue, and this was before I met Sue. Not because I dislike the name Sue, I love the name Sue. But what happens when you name your primal brain is you are able to have a conversation with it, because your primal brain is very loud in your head. And at the moment, it's in the driving seat of your life, and you're complaining about your destination. So what we really want to do is get you in the driver's seat. And that's where our prefrontal cortex comes in. This is our higher brain. This is what enables us to think ahead of time, to plan for the future, to decide rationally and consciously how we want to behave. But so many of us aren't being guided by our prefrontal cortex. We're being guided by this cave person that's screaming in our face, in our heads, we need to eat the whole packet of buttons, otherwise we're going to die. So we want to start to not believe our primal brain so much and start listening to our prefrontal cortex, because it always serves you. It is your expert, and it will always give you your best advice. So when you're planning ahead and you ask your higher self, what do I need to eat tomorrow in order to fuel my body, to make me feel good? Your prefrontal cortex is going to give you what you need. It's going to give you the advice. Whereas in the moment, if you wait to that minute where you're starving hungry, your primal brain is going to be screaming at you to eat all the biscuits. So we don't want to listen to that part of our brain. We want to start learning how to engage and work from our prefrontal cortex. So that's what's happening in your brain on a bit of a simpler level. The other thing that I wanted to explain to you is a little bit about emotions. Now, I want you to imagine that your life is like a pie. This circle is your life. Half the time, you are designed to feel positive, and half the time, you are designed to feel negative. This is part of our human existence. You can't have one without the other. But we live in a society where we should always be happy. We should always be positive. We should always look on the bright side. And that is just a load of bollocks. Because what happens when you feel negative is you then start to judge yourself for feeling negative. So what actually happens is we create more negativity, because when we're trying to avoid this emotion, maybe it's anxiety, sadness, embarrassment, boredom has been a big thing over the last couple of years with the pandemic. We try and avoid that emotion by eating because our brain thinks, well, the dopamine's good, let's have the pleasure. But then what happens is we put on weight, we start to judge ourselves and criticize ourselves. Why didn't I just stop at one? Why did I have to eat the whole packet? So now not only are you feeling bored or anxious, you're feeling bored and anxious and you're feeling sick and you've got brain fog and your energy levels are spiking all over the place. You can't concentrate or focus. So what actually then happens is we create more negativity. By avoiding this emotion, we end up creating more negativity. Whereas when we come right back to the beginning and look at this emotion and go, actually, let's take boredom. That is just a vibration in my body. I don't need to avoid it. I don't need to try and get rid of it. I can simply experience it. And the craving for sugar is an emotion. And we class it as a negative emotion because we don't like feel it. It's urgent. I have to have sugar and I have to have it now. So that we can learn how to experience that emotional response and not react to it. And when you're comfortable feeling uncomfortable, we can come back to the 50-50 of our emotions. And actually, when you're comfortable feeling uncomfortable, the positive side tends to increase. So the next thing that I wanted to teach you was how life works. I know before I do that, I'm going to teach you about the motivational triad. So your primal brain is motivated by three things. It wants everything to be easy. It always wants to avoid pain, and it always wants to seek pleasure. So this is why it's a challenge to change, right? Because we have a primal brain that's motivated to survive. It thinks that the craving for sugar or any negative emotion is painful. It sees the dopamine hit as a pleasure. So of course, it's going to scream at us to eat the dopamine. And this is without bringing in all the physical effects that Sue told us about earlier. This is kind of on top of that. So this is why it can be a challenge to change. But notice it's a challenge. It's not impossible. We can absolutely learn to manage all of this within our head. So this is how life works, not just with sugar, but actually with any situation in your life. Life gives you a circumstance. It gives you a situation and an event that you have no control over. That could be a chocolate bar in a shop. It could be a glass of wine. It could be the weather. It could be equipment breaking down. It could be your children's behavior, or it could be your boss at work, or it could be a project. That circumstance, we can include bereavement and illness into this as well. That circumstance is actually completely neutral until you have a thought about it. Now, what I mean by neutral is somebody else would experience the same situation and they might feel differently about it. And the reason that's possible is because it's your thoughts that create your feelings. It's never the situation. So I'm going to say this again because this will bend your brain a little bit. It kind of goes against everything that we've ever been raised to believe. It's your thoughts that create your emotions, not the circumstance. Now, that's not to say that you don't want to sometimes feel negative. There are some situations where absolutely we want to feel sad, we want to feel horrified, we want to grieve. We maybe want to feel embarrassed or shame. But we can experience that emotion knowing that we're causing them and own it and give ourselves permission to feel it. Nothing has gone wrong when we experience a negative emotion. So our thoughts create our feelings. Depending on how you feel, will drive all of your actions or your inactions, create an inaction. And depending on what you do or don't do will give you a result in your life. Now, this is something called the model that was created by Brooke Kassir at the Life Coach School, which is where I certified. So I can't take credit for this, but this is basically how the world works in the tiny little day-to-day situations as well as the life-altering ones, which is brilliant news because we always get to choose how we experience our emotions or experience our situations by managing our thoughts. So now let's bring it back to sugar and how this relates to you. So the first step in the mind management of trying to control your sugar cravings is knowing what your circumstance is. What is your trigger? What triggers the rest of this process for you? So Sue said earlier, it was a time of day. It could be that you actually see cake or chocolate. It could be that you're feeling an emotion. It could be that you're feeling bored or anxious. So this is all neutral, the time of day. Even the insulin spike in your body can be classed as neutral because it's outside of your brain. Feeling a negative emotion, you don't have to judge it or criticize it, but this is your trigger. And it's not until you have a thought that then channels the rest of the emotion. So I want you to get a little bit involved in here, actually. And rather than just sitting and listening, why don't you open the Q&A box, and I want you to write in there, tell me what triggers you. Like, is it that you see a packet of biscuits? Is it that you see a fizzy drink? Is it that, it's a time of day for you? And then I want you to tell me what you think when you see those things or when you have that time of day. So just open the Q&A and pop in there some of your responses. Let's see if I can open it up. Because whilst you're doing that, I'm just going to give you some examples. So my thought when I see a chocolate bar, or if I'm feeling bored, or for me, it's that antsy feeling, I think it'll make me feel better. So we've got some responses here. So we've got like, it's a treat, or it's a reward. Yeah. So we have a thought that it'll help me relax. It'll make me feel better. And it's actually that thought that creates the urge, the emotional urge for it. So then what happens is when you're feeling the urge and you're feeling that craving, what do we see you taking the action? We see you eating it. You get the dopamine hit, your sugars spike, and you feel good temporarily. But the long-term effect is you actually feel so much worse. So temporarily you feel better. So then your brain's gone, well, that worked. It definitely made us feel better. Let's do that again and again and again. And you're into that vicious circle. Yeah. So warm summer's night, I always want a glass of cold wine. Yeah. So you're that trigger of the warm summer's night, and you're thinking, oh, I'll have a glass of cold wine. So boredom, exactly. Feeling bored and then thinking, right, the chocolate will make me feel better. And it does. For a very short period of time, you get the dopamine hit. Your levels shoot up. You feel good very temporarily. And then what happens is everything crashes. And in the long term, you feel so much worse, because then the judgment starts. You have the hangover. You have the weight gain. You have the criticism. You feel sick. So we don't want to judge this awareness. We want to just learn from this and go, right, okay, because once you're aware of it, then you get to control it. You get to learn to manage it. This is what we need to do. So when you know your trigger, when you know that it's when you feel bored, or so Lillian has said here, it usually happens quickly with no thought, or so you think. Exactly, Lillian. So your brain is so clever, it doesn't want you to think about this because it wants the dopamine hit, right? So that's it being efficient. That's your primal brain taking the easy route, takes everything into the unconscious. So, which is why the awareness is so important. So now you know what your trigger is. You know that if you see your favorite chocolate, or you see your favorite biscuit, or you see that glass of wine, noticing that thought, it's a treat. It'll make me feel better. It's a reward. And notice how that thought makes you feel, and that emotional craving that it creates. Once you're aware of this, then what we want to do is cut it off here. We want to interrupt this process. And this is where the consciousness and the deliberateness comes in. Because what we want to do is we don't want to eat. Instead, we want to allow this emotion. And by allow the emotion, I simply mean, and my pen's running out, breathe into it. Just notice, where do I experience it in my body? So for me, if I've got a whole heap, so my thing was always chocolate buttons and squashies. So if I've got the chocolate buttons and the squashies laid out in front of me, I have this fuzzy sort of heat here at the top of my arms and like this pulling in my diaphragm. That's how I experience the craving for sugar, the emotional craving. I can just breathe into this. And the way I like this is to like a labor contraction. For those of us that have experienced the joys of labor, it kind of builds and builds and builds and builds and peaks, and you breathe, and then it releases and it disperses. And the craving for sugar is exactly the same. It builds and builds and builds and builds. You can breathe into it. You can relax. You can surrender yourself to that emotion, and it will disappear. I'm going to say that again. The emotion will disappear. Research shows us that our emotions, when we process them and experience them and allow them to be present in our body, only last for about 90 seconds. So for 90 seconds, and I found actually it was usually about 30 to 60 seconds. Now that I've been doing it for a while, it's not even that. You can just experience it. You can breathe into it. You don't have to respond to it by eating the sugar. You don't have to get rid of it or eliminate it. It's perfectly harmless. Whereas the eating the sugar is not harmless. So then what happens is temporarily, you're going to feel bad, because temporarily, that's a poor pen to be using. Temporarily, you're going to experience the discomfort of the craving. That was running out as well. But in the long term, you're going to feel so good. So either way here, you're going to experience an element of discomfort. One's going to last for 90 seconds, or if you carry on eating the sugar, one's going to last a lifetime, or for however long you eat the sugar. So it's not like you're choosing comfort over discomfort. You're choosing temporary discomfort or long-term discomfort. And I'm not here to tell you what you should do. And I'm not judging you for your choices, but you do get to decide which discomfort you want to experience. One's going to keep you stuck, spinning in the craving cycle, eating it, feeling shit, eating it, feeling shit, eating it, feeling shit, judging yourself, criticizing yourself, feeling bad, so eating more to try and feel better, which doesn't work. Or you can learn to start controlling what goes into your body. You can start managing your mind and learning how to experience your emotions instead of eating them away, which is going to give you such a longer term benefit. So you can start this process right now. Like from the minute you get off this call this evening, if you're in the habit of having a cup of tea and a biscuit before you go to bed tonight, have the cup of tea, don't have the biscuit. Very compassionately listen to your brain screaming at you, because it will fucking scream at you. If your brain is anything like mine, it's like, eat the biscuits, eat the chocolate. That's not a problem. We don't have to listen to that voice. That voice does not control your motor skills. You do that with the rest of your amazing brain. So next time you notice, oh, I just have a biscuit, or I've started, so now I'll carry on. That's a big one, isn't it? I couldn't just have one. I had to eat the whole packet. So just notice that those thoughts, those sentences in your head, your thoughts are not facts. They're not actually true. You don't have to believe them. And you can just experience that emotion, knowing that nothing has actually gone wrong. You don't have to respond to it, eliminate it, or get rid of it. So that's how, on an emotional level, you get control of your sugar cravings. You quite literally learn to experience them instead of eliminating them by eating. So the third thing, so Sue has covered the physical support element of the sugar cravings. I've covered the mind management support, the mind management side and the emotional side of sugar cravings. And the third thing is accountability. Now, I know that your primal brain is loud. I know that your primal brain is not going to stop until you've learned to love it and listen to it and not believe it anymore. Because of course, there are times when we do want to be governed by our primal brain. If you are in a life-threatening situation, please listen to it. But standing in a supermarket is not life-threatening. Having someone shouting at you isn't life-threatening. Having that wine in the fridge or having the biscuits in the cupboard is not life-threatening. So when your primal brain is screaming at you that you have to eat it, you actually don't. So what happens? So giving yourself an accountability partner, give yourself somebody who is going to very compassionately and very lovingly just remind you, first of all, why you want to start reducing your sugar in the first place. The health benefits, the emotional benefits are huge. And then having that person to support you through that journey. Maybe you can find a friend that does it together. Maybe that you could get a group of you that does it together. But having someone that's just going to support you and keep you going through that journey is invaluable. And this is kind of where I come in as well. So with your permission, I would like to explain to you an option that you have as to how we could work together and how I could support you to reduce the amount of sugar in your diet and start to get control of your cravings, the physical and the emotional. So I've got a 21-day reset and reduce program. And over those 21 days, with the help of two supplements that can support the body, and with lessons on how to manage your mind, how to manage your emotions, and with coaching alongside to help you stick to the accountability, to help with the support, and to help with the encouragement, is going to enable you to get control of your sugar cravings. So the two supplements, and Sue, please jump in at any point to help me out with this bit, is there's something called Body Prime, and Body Prime is a magnesium supplement. When we take magnesium, magnesium helps support the intestinal function. So like Sue was telling us earlier, all about the intestine, and magnesium is really going to help support the intestinal function. It helps to expel any toxins from our system. So as we go through this process, as we start to eliminate sugar, toxins are going to be released into our system and our liver starts to struggle. So our liver is naturally designed to detoxify our body anyway, but with the amount of toxins that we've got in our 21st century, the liver is struggling. Even if you have a healthy, wholesome diet, your liver might be struggling with all the external toxins that are around us. So magnesium, and there's also prune powder and apple pectin, it really helps to support the liver function, support the intestinal function, and also is going to help balance out those sugar levels. It's going to help reduce your fatigue, and it's going to really help your quality of sleeping. Along with that, we also take...
Jump in there to say that
absolutely.
Magnesium has a role to play in about 300 different functions in the body. Yes. So most of us are magnesium deficient. And what this magnesium will do is also help to transport insulin into your cells for energy production, so you can become less insulin resistant as well. So there's real benefits to including magnesium in any kind of blood sugar balancing program, for sure.
Yeah. Thank you. So the other thing that we start to take is something called Vitalife. And this is a little, some liquid that we put into water. It has a minty taste to it. It's got chlorophyll in it. And so this really creates alkalinity within the body, which is vital for optimum health. It's going to enable us to increase our daily energy levels. It's going to help us to sleep better. It's going to help to gently detoxify the system from all the heavy metals and the toxins that are going to be expelled, that are around us anyway, but especially when we start to go through that process of eliminating sugars, those toxins that are released, this is going to help us to reduce that. And it also helps to change your taste buds a little bit. So if you're used to drinking lots of caffeine, lots of squash or fizzy drinks, having that switch over to water can be a bit dull. So having the Vitalife, not only is it supporting you physically, it's also helping you change your taste buds and supporting your taste buds. And that's one of the things that we really want to start doing, is really starting to reduce the sweetness that we're used to. Because when you take the artificial sweeteners out of your diet, then things like carrots, peppers, sugar snap peas tastes amazing, and they make us feel good. So it's a win-win situation. Over those 21 days, not only are we going to support the physical element of our body, we're also going to learn the skills of managing our mind. So there will be a number of lessons that teach you mind management and emotional management, and really starting to learn the skill of recognizing those voices within your head and learning how to plan ahead of time, how to decide consciously, how to think rationally, and how to deal with those emotions when they come up. As well as that, we're also going to have 3 live group coaching sessions together. So in those sessions, we get to discuss what's going on in your mind. You get to hear what's going on in other people's minds. And I guarantee you, everybody is thinking the same thing. It's not just your primal brain, it is the primal brain. We all have it. All humans have exactly the same part of that brain that is trying to keep us safe. And when you understand that it's not just you going through it, that support, that relief, that accountability is just going to help you drive that passion to keep going, to enhance that well-being, to start to feel really good. And when you start to feel really good, when you start managing your mind, all the other areas of your life's going to improve. So this isn't just about you and your body. This isn't just about the physical energy or reducing the fatigue or feeling better. This is also about showing up as the best version of you that you can possibly be. And when you are the best version of you, your relationships improve, your time management improves, your stress levels improve, you'll get better at your job, you'll be more present with your children, you'll have so much more energy to be the best person of you that you want to be. So I would like to offer that package to you. I'm going to be really honest with you. This is the first time that I've run this program. So if you're ready to make a difference, doing my beta test, doing the first round of this is going to be amazing, because I'm going to give you a WhatsApp group where we can support each other through it. So we'll all be in it together. And because it's the first time that I'm going through this program, Sue is also going to be there to support us. So not only do you get me, you're going to get Sue in the WhatsApp group as well, answering any questions that you have. There's going to be daily challenges to help you keep you on track, as well as the coaching calls and the lessons to help you manage your mind and your emotions around sugar. I'm doing all of that at a completely ridiculous introductory package of only £147. But I've got a code for you. And if you're willing to show up for yourself and go all in and sign up within the next 24 hours, I've got a discount code that will give you another £20 off. So for £127, you are quite literally going in 21 days to start to change your physical health as well as your emotional and mental well-being. So if that's something that appeals to you, I'm going to open the chat and I'm going to put a link to the payment for you to pay, as well as the code. So you can go ahead and get yourself booked on, because there is going to be limited numbers and I have already sold some spaces. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I'm going to invite Sue to add anything that she feels is relevant at this point.
Yeah, sorry, I was just trying to find the unmute button there. The additional thing that I would say when you were talking about the 90 seconds for the cravings, you can also, there's also from a physiological point of view, you can set a timer on your phone. So if you find yourself craving something, set a timer on your phone for 20 minutes and go out and do something else, or just divert your attention and wait until the 20 minutes is up. Because when that 20 minutes is up, usually what happens in that time is your liver kicks in and starts to release some of the glycogen from us, either from our muscles or from our liver, to basically bring your blood glucose levels back up again. So your cravings can go from a physiological point of view as well, from the liver kicks in and starts to bring our blood glucose levels back up naturally as well. So as well as managing your mind around those choices, hold out for 20 minutes, because there's a good job if you hold out for 20 minutes, that craving will disappear completely, because your liver has basically come back in with bringing your blood glucose levels back up again, without needing to eat anything. And that's when I mentioned metabolically flexible. You become more metabolically flexible when you can get your liver to kick back in again. The trouble is, we're in a situation where we feel hungry, so we eat glucose, and we're just on that roller coaster. And rather than stepping back from it, doing your breathing, which you talked about, and then saying, I'm waiting for 20 minutes because I know my liver will lift my blood glucose levels back up without me needing to eat anything. And that's when you can manage your weight more effectively as well.
Yeah. Oh, because I forgot to say at the beginning, having cut out sugar from my diet, learning how to control my sugar cravings, I was able to lose 2 stone in weight and have maintained it really easily, actually. And I didn't think I needed to lose that much weight, but clearly I did. So Lillian's actually asked a very good question. When does the course start? Thank you. Good information to know. So it's going to be, we're going to start on the 21st of June, and the live calls will be at 7:30 in the evening. They will be recorded. So even if you can't make them live, although I would really encourage you to do so, you will still learn and get the support from the group and the coaching. And there's something really powerful about watching somebody else get coached, because when you're getting coached and you're experiencing the emotion, sometimes we can be a bit defensive. We can put up a bit of a wall, and we're not quite as able to receive the feedback. And then it's not until after that you sort of mull it over and go, oh yeah, that's really helpful, and that's right. But when you're watching somebody else and you realize, oh, so that's exactly what I experienced, you're able to absorb the information quite a bit easier. So what I will just point out is that your primal brain is probably going to say to you, oh no, that's too expensive, or no, I don't have time, I can't, when I've got too much going on. Of course your primal brain's going to tell you that, because your primal brain wants everything to be easy. It quite literally thinks that whilst you might feel really shit, it's familiar, and it likes familiar. You're not dead, therefore where you are is good. So the first step is actually committing to yourself, is standing up to that primal brain and going, no, do you know what? My health is so much more important. My emotional and mental state is so much more important. And this is my commitment to myself. This is me going all in. And that is that like step, because it's that same brain that's getting you to eat all the sugar. So of course it's not going to want you to stop. So the first step is kind of standing up to that primal brain, and it will give you really good logical reasons why you shouldn't do it, or where like now's not quite the right time, or I haven't quite got the money, or I don't really have the it will give you logical reasons and justified reasons, but you get to decide. Because I know deep down inside you, you don't want to feel this way anymore. I didn't. I was done feeling crap. And so this is your opportunity to change all of that. And I would love to help you and support you to do that, physically and emotionally. Sue, Jenny has asked, how do I test my blood sugars, please?
Well, it's quite hard to test your blood sugars unless you get a blood glucose monitor. So they are on the marketplace these days. It used to be that you do a finger prick, and then you put the little bit of blood into the little machine. Now you can get a blood glucose monitor that basically sits on the back of your arm, and it has a tiny little kind of filament that just goes into a little paw at the back of your arm, and that will monitor your blood glucose levels in conjunction with an app, basically. There are lots on the marketplace, some are better than others, but your best way to monitor your blood glucose levels, if I'm honest, and you want the cheapest way of doing it, is to food journal, to write a food journal of what you've eaten and how you felt 2 hours later. And if you felt tired and exhausted and brain fog like, that food didn't work for you. So you need to adjust it. You either need to take out some of the carbohydrate, add some more protein in, adjust it accordingly. And that's how I know what my blood glucose levels are doing, because I know how I will feel within 2 hours of eating something. And I can look at something and go, yeah, that I'd like to eat that, but I know in 2 hours time it's going to make me feel rubbish, so I'm not going to eat it. But there'll be other things I think, oh, that'll be fine, I'll eat that, and I'll eat it, and then I'll go, so a really good example, I made some lentil soup and I added a few extra ingredients that I wouldn't normally add. A couple of for me it was buckwheat I added to it, and it just completely wiped me out. It really didn't work for my blood sugars. I was exhausted. Within 2 hours, I was exhausted. So I can tell what foods work for me and what foods don't. So really, it's all about just start to listen to what your body's telling you, start to listen to how your body responds to food, and you can create your own blueprint around what foods work for you and what foods don't. And don't be kind of corralled into thinking this is a complex carbohydrate that's going to keep your insulin balanced by the food industry, because no one size fits all. There is no one size fits all. It's all about you listening to what your body tells you and how food makes you feel. And when you get that blueprint, it's really easy to follow. You know what foods work and what foods don't, and it's really easy to make those choices.
Yeah. Thank you, Sue. So Alison has asked, once paid for the coaching course, what will happen next? Another great question. So I will be in touch with you via email, and I will send you the handbook. I will send you all the details. I will send you all the dates and the times. And on the Friday before we start, I will create the the WhatsApp group and invite you all into it. And then we will start all together on the Tuesday. So I'm actually going to be closing registration this Sunday because I need the time to order the products and send the products to you. So that gives us enough time to do that. But I will be in touch via email to confirm all the details, to give you a handbook, to explain what's going to happen. And the live coaching will be done on Zoom, just like we've done tonight, although we'll actually be able to see each other. I'll be able to see you rather than you just seeing me, and we'll be able to interact. So yeah, once you've paid for the coaching, then I will be in touch over the next couple of days with everything that you need to know about getting started, and when to expect your little package and all of that information. Thank you, Alison. Was there any more questions? I noticed, Jenny, you've got your hand raised. Did you actually have a question, or is that by accident? If it was an accident,
I think it was raised right from the very beginning, I think.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah.
I tell you what, I'm going to lower everybody's hands, and then if you do have a question, raise it back up again, and we can I can bring you on. So how long is the live coaching, Lillian? It's going to be an hour. So on a Tuesday at 7:30 for an hour, for 3 coaching for 3 weeks. So I'm going to take you through the 3 weeks of the physical support, as well as the mind management support. So we've got in the chat here, what will happen to overseas participants when they also receive a package? Absolutely. Yep, I can send that out to you. It might be, Alison, that I send it. I'll have to figure out the logistics, but yes, absolutely, we can get it sent to you. That's not a problem at all. And even if they don't quite arrive in time, but Sue, I think the shipping's pretty quick. Alison, are you in? I think it doesn't matter where Alison is, but there we go, South Africa. Thank you. Is that it? Can it's not a problem?
Totally possible. Yeah.
Thank you. So yeah, that's not a problem at all. So I think if there aren't any more questions, we'll leave it there. So just to confirm that it's 21 days group coaching program with the physical support as well. So we're really supporting the physical body as well as the mindset and the emotions. And after those 21 days, you're really just going to start to feel so much better. You're going to have more energy. You're going to feel so much more in control. You're going to be making better food choices. You're just going to be starting to look after yourself and feel so much better. So all of that is for £147 until Sunday, or if you do it in the next 24 hours. So the discount code is valid until midnight tomorrow. You get the extra £20 off. So if there aren't any other questions, thank you, Lillian, for your thank you. Sue, was there anything finally you wanted to add before we close up?
Yeah, no, it's brilliant. I learned loads listening to you as well, so it's lovely.
We'll do it again.
Yeah,
we'll just keep doing it. And of course, Sue, like, even if you don't like my style, if you're thinking I don't like my style but I love Sue's style, Sue does this as well. So this isn't just about me. Sue is also available. So if you prefer Sue's style, it doesn't matter who you get coached by, get that support, get that accountability. So which Tuesday do I start? The 21st of June we're going to start. You need to sign up by this Sunday. This Sunday is oh no, I'm not on my, I'm trying to look at the calendar, but this Sunday is
I'll look at it for you. This Sunday will be the 12th. Sunday the 12th of June. Yeah.
So you've got until the 12th of June to sign up and to pay. And we're going to start on the 21st. So, but I will send you all of that information once you've
and there's lots of things you can be doing beforehand as well, isn't there? So if you sign up on the 12th, you could set yourself a little goal of starting to reduce down your caffeine, or looking at where there's hidden sugars in your diet and all that kind of thing. So you can start to make some adjustments before you start on the Reset and Reduce program as well, can't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, don't wait till the 21st and then do it. Start to, and even if you don't do the program, start to mindfully reduce your intake of sugar right from this point. That's just a favor that you can do for yourself, learning what you've learned tonight. Does the payment include the magnesium other supplements? Yes, it does. So that payment includes all of it. So it includes the supplements, it includes the live coaching, it includes the recording of the coaching, it includes the WhatsApp group, it includes the daily challenges. There's tips on mindfulness as well. So it includes that. Plus it includes all the lessons, the extra lessons that you'll get on how to manage your mind. So all of that, £127.
Phenomenal deal.
You can't even go away for a weekend for that, can you?
Yeah, loads of value.
Yeah. So the other thing that I will say actually is, because this is the first time doing it, and we've got Sue's support, I am also looking for feedback and testimonials. So your contribution will be just as valuable as to me as anything else. So which is why it's also a crazy price, because it's, the feedback and the learning that that I'm going to be having as well as your change in life, I think. Okay, everybody, if you have any more questions, then please don't hesitate to get in touch with me. I'm going to be sending out the recording of this anyway, so you're very welcome to listen back, and the email will obviously have my details in it. I'll put Sue's details in it, and I'll put the link to pay in there as well if you haven't quite got it down now. So thank you very, very much for your time, everybody. Thank you, Sue, for joining me. It was a pleasure, and I'll speak to everybody again soon. Bye. Bye. Stop the recording.